For my final project, I chose to do a survey on social media. I decided to do social media because it has honestly become such a large factor in today's world. And I was curious to see how much of an impact it really had on our everyday lives. So I used the survey to help gather information in different age groups and different types of social media and other things alike to kind of get an idea of how it was being used by people other than myself. The first question that I asked was, what social media platform do you use the most? And I was honestly surprised about the results that I got with Facebook sitting at 52.6%, Snapchat at 16.5%, Instagram at 18.6%, and Twitter at 12.4%. And what was most surprising to me was that I was not expecting to see Facebook as that triumphant in which platforms were used the most. And I was also surprised to see that Tumblr, LinkedIn, and MySpace were social medias that weren't even really considered. I wanted to go ahead and see if I could find some research that supported the results that I had gotten from the survey, basically. So I did a little research and came across a study done by the Pew Research Center for Internet and Technology. And as I received in my statistics, Facebook was one of the top sites that dominated the use of people in the United States. As it was the case from the beginning of their survey, um, to when the results came out, Facebook remained a primary platform for most of the Americans. And roughly two-thirds of US adults, at 68%, now report that they are Facebook users. And roughly three-quarters of those users access Facebook on a daily basis. I thought that there was some kind of maybe discrepancy in my statistics because I did take it upon myself to share the survey throughout Facebook as well as Snapchat and Twitter. But I did get a majority of my likes pulled in and my shares pulled in from Facebook. So I thought originally that maybe that would have had. Some kind of interference with the statistics and the outcomes. But according to the research, that seems to be pretty similar across the board. For my second question, I asked how often do you look at social media? And this was, something that also surprised me. The majority of people are looking at social media 10 plus times a day. And literally, you can't even see the percentage for how many people are looking at it less than once a day. And it makes you think how much is social media taking over our time in our everyday lives? Because from 97 of my responses, 54.6 of those people said they go 10 plus times a day to look at social media. 24.7% say 5 to 10 times a day. And even at 2 to 5 times a day, which seems like it's still a little bit much, it's 17.5%. And then we have the smaller amounts, which surprised me the most because it's you can hardly see how many people only visit social media once a day and how many people do it less than once a day. Um, and it's just surprising to see how many times people are accessing social media. My third question was, how many social media accounts do you have? I actually liked that this question had a little bit of variance between over 97 responses, it was pretty spread out across the board. It seems that most people would categorize themselves as having 3 accounts and then 4 accounts, and then 2 accounts. And then it kind of is tied between having 1 account or 5 or more accounts, which is pretty interesting because you go from having just the one, you have the people that have just the 1 account, and then you have the people that are just, completely engulfed in the social media account world. And on the following slide, you'll find the mean, median, mode, and standard deviation for this data. So this is the data pulled from how many social media accounts do you have? As we saw from the graph in the previous slide, the median is about 3. Most people have 3 social media accounts. And I graphed out, I didn't put how many points I had throughout the graph because I did have 97 responses, so it would have taken a very long time, nor would you have been able to see all of the responses that I got. But I did go ahead and highlight between +1 and -1 standard deviation, you know, where the statistics would fall between for those. For question number 4, I asked, how often do you post on social media? And this one actually particularly surprised me because for the previous slides, we saw that there were many people that had multiple accounts. There were people that were accessing social media 10 plus times a day. And now on this, we're seeing that the majority of people only post on social media every few weeks at 41.2%. So from this data and the previous data, I'm pulling out information that people are really just going on social media more so to browse than to actually post things of their own. But then you do have, on the other hand, 32% of people that go on and post daily. And then at 32%. And then we have the every few months people at 12.4%, multiple times a day 11.3%, and then a little portion is that people that never post at all, they just go on to look. But it's kind of interesting that at 53.6% of the people that took this survey are posting only every few weeks or every few months, which was data that I was not expecting to see. Question number 5 was, how much time do you spend on social media a day? And I have to be honest that it did surprise me a little bit about this chart based on the previous chart or an earlier chart where we had seen that people were going on 10 plus times a day, or for the majority they were going more than 5 times a day. So this chart was interesting because you would think that with going on that often that more people would have been at 3+ hours a day. But here it seems that that only falls at 18.6%, with 2 to 3 hours coming in at 34% and 32% falling between 1 to 2 hours. And based on the previous data, I'm not surprised to see that 12.4% and less spend an hour or less on social media a day. But I am surprised a little that 3+ hours is not a little bit higher than the other options. And something that I just wanted to add was, while I was doing the pilot of this survey, I had my boyfriend take the pilot portion of it. And I noticed that when he was answering this question that he answered it a little bit differently than I would have answered it for him. So, where I was thinking that he should have been choosing the 3+ hours a day because he spends significant time on social media, he chose more between 1 to 2 hours, which had me questioning, looking at the data, are people kind of shooting lower on the spectrum for themselves and not being completely honest with how often they spend on social media because they just can't admit it? Or do they just not realize how much time they are actually spending on social media? On this slide, I pulled up some more data from the Pew Research Center. Um, and I was looking through this and I realized that their statistics, pretty much line up with what I was getting. So for Facebook, it looks like the majority of people are going on several times a day. Um, and then the same thing with Snapchat and Instagram. Even Twitter and YouTube, it showed a significant amount of people that were going on several times a day. For question number 6, I asked, when do you go on social media? And honestly, I was not surprised to see that 81.4% of people that responded choose to go on social media when they have a free moment. Because it does seem to be that most people, from the previous statistics, are going on to browse and maybe just look around, do it as they're bored. So that actually does fit with the data that I've gotten from previous question. I was surprised though to see how many people choose to use social media at work and school, during social hour, and even at meal times. Like there are 35.1% of people using social media while they're at work or at school, 17.5% using social media while they're out being social. And 20.6% of people that are even using social media while they eat. I mean, and these are just like kind of mind boggling data points for me because I never have been the type of person that would use my phone while I was out with my friends or use my phone at meal times. And I rarely ever am able to find time to use social media while I'm at work. So I just find the data a little bit interesting. And then you have the 34% of people that say they just use it anytime and all the time. For question number 7, I asked what the majority of people are using social media for, and like I had said, it mostly comes to browse and to subside boredom at 85.6%. Below news, there's another pretty staggering one at 78.4. I know for whatever reason it didn't show up here. Maybe it was too long, but at on this one, 78.4%, this is keeping in touch with friends and family, which actually seems to make sense for Facebook's platform. Um, and then we have 63.9% going on for entertainment, 61.9 going on to share photos and videos. And then we have 39% for the news, 20.6% for business, and 24.7% for inspiration. On the lower spectrums, we have 7.2% of people just looking to meet new people, 3.1% looking to date, and then the 1% was actually put in as an other option. So 1% of people use it for other reasons, and it actually looks like someone put down that they use it to browse social events in the area. So pretty interesting data, but as I understood it to be, it looks like the majority of people are using it to browse, subside boredom, keep in touch with friends and family, follow up on news, entertainment, inspiration, share our own videos and photos with our friends and families. And then we do have the people that use it, to date, and then other reasons as well. Question number 8, I asked, how important on average is social media to you on a scale of 1 to 5? One being not important at all, and five being the most important thing. Now, originally, I do not know how I didn't realize that the chart went from 0 to 4 and then 7 and 51. Um, when originally it was supposed to be 0 to 5 and then 5 plus. People that just considered it to be more than five, more than the most important thing. And for this information, I was honestly surprised to see that um, it was like one of the most important things to people. So, like at 42.3%, people are saying that it's more than half. Um, so it's pretty important. 17.5%, and then we got the 1% at the higher levels. So, on average, 61.8% of people are saying that it's over three. Um, like just that it is not really seen as something that is not important, but actually more important to people's everyday lives. And on the previous slide, I provide a little more data based off of this data itself. So here is the mean, median, mode, and standard deviation for the previous question on how important is social media to you on a scale of 1 to 5. Um, and this just goes to show, again, I wasn't going to do the 97 different responses within the graph, but this goes to show that at where it would fall for those that are falling between -1 standard deviation and +1 standard deviation. For question number 9, I asked, how old are you? Um, I was making it a point to make sure that I had an age bracket somewhere in the survey, just because I think it's pretty important to understand how different age groups affects social media and how social media affects different age groups. So I wasn't surprised to see that the majority of users were 21 to 30. What did surprise me was that there wasn't a higher amount of 16 to 20-year-olds and 13 to 16-year-olds, because, I feel as if from national data that teenagers are the ones that tend to use the most social media. With that being said, my data was shared amongst my family and my friends, so it could have been just the group of people that the survey was presented to didn't have a high rate of people that fell within those areas. Um, so it's not completely surprising to see 51.5% of 21 to 30-year-olds when I'm 27, and even 34% of them being 31 and over. And for question number 10, I chose to ask, do you ever consider yourself addicted to social media? And I thought this was an interesting question because where a lot of people tend to look at these questions and undershoot or overshoot where they actually fall, maybe because they just don't know or because they're embarrassed to say what the actual response would be. But I was completely surprised to see that 48.5% of people consider themselves not addicted to social media. Yet, um, the majority of people were spending, going on social media 10 plus times a day, spending over 1 hour a day on social media, using it at work, at school, during social outings, at meal times. So it was a little surprising to me to see that most people consider themselves not addicted to social media. Um, and I honestly did expect to see yes or maybe as higher percentages than just 29.9% for maybe and 21.6% for yes. So, just some observations and, a little explanation on why I chose to do this. Social media is such a heavy influence in the people around me. Between my boyfriend, my sisters that are younger than me, even majority of my friends, I tend to notice that social media is such a big influence on how they spend their time, how they spend their day, even how they interact with friends and family of their own. So I wanted to see how people around me, not just my friends and family, other people expanded how social media influenced them and if it correlated to what I was seeing for people in my everyday life. Because for me, I feel as if social media isn't really like a huge deal to me. So it's always been kind of surprising to me how important it is to other people. And I shared previously I told you how I previously shared my data through all the social media options that I provided here: Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. I tried to put it out on each portal in different ways to make sure that I could just get a variety of different responses, but I did get the majority of my responses from Facebook, so I was not surprised to see Facebook triumphant. Um, but I am a little surprised by the data that I did receive here. And I know I talked about it on each slide, but it is kind of surprising to me how people just don't tend to understand how much of an impact the time they spend on social media is on their everyday life. Um, and I also, was a little surprised to see that some of the data that I thought maybe was just pulled or just the way it was because I pulled it from certain areas was actually found to be more nationwide um, than I thought it would be. So, overall, this was a really kind of mind blowing project to do, and I'm glad I did it on social media. And yeah, I think it was a pretty interesting project, and I'm glad I did it. And hopefully, you all got a little something more from this than to be expected. And I just wanted to provide a link for where I accessed the information that I used to compare my data with, the nationwide data.